This has Islander fans very concerned, as early on into the season, Patrick Roy has been making some very strange coaching decisions, and I think the Islanders' lines today at practice perfectly exemplify some of these decisions that really do not make sense for the New York Islanders if they are going to be the best team they can be. And fans are very frustrated with some of these lineup decisions, rightfully so. I will say, I think the Islanders' lines make absolutely no sense. But I am going to say this right off the bat in this video. I'm seeing a lot of tweets, a lot of comments on this page about how Patrick Roy should be fired, and I completely disagree with this, especially when it comes to a mid-season coaching change. The Islanders are not a roster constructed in the sense where it makes sense to change a coach. While they are not performing well, this is not a very deep roster, and it's understandable why they're losing games early on. It would make more sense if they were a team that had legitimate Stanley Cup aspirations and they were playing this poor this early to begin to start talking about moving on from Patrick Roy. But just based on what this team is, doesn't really make sense to talk about this now. As we get further on in the season, if stuff like this continues, then yes, I think there will be legitimate discussion on whether or no he should be let go of at the end of the season. But Mathew Darche is not going to fire Patrick Roy 10 games into the season, especially after he elected to keep on going with him during the offseason when he had the chance to move on for a new coach. And I will say too, when it comes to letting go of a coach and bringing in a new coach, that is a move that is better done in the offseason. Otherwise, you might get stuck with another not so great option. With that being said, let's get right into talking about these lines. And yeah, just taking a look, we're going to go through the lineup because really, I think other than the second line, which is currently listed as Duclair, Barzal, and Palmieri, I have an issue with all four of these lines for the New York Islanders. And let's not even get started about the defensive players, because one thing I brought up in the previous video is it's so strange that Patrick Roy is so quick to make changes when the Islanders lose a game, and yet the reason they've lost their first three games of the season have been the defensive pairs, and all three of them are the same. Now, while Schaefer and Mayfield is currently listed as the first pair, for the record, I think they just list these pairs randomly. I don't think it really matters where they are in the order. But all three pairs are the same, with Schaefer, Mayfield, Pelech, Polak, and then Romanov, DeAngelo. That is the pair that I'm looking at that something needs to change. And I'd love to see them bring in Bovequist for a game to play for DeAngelo to see if that's a better fit with Romanov and Bovequist. But alas, Patrick Roy is not making any moves there. Where he is making a move is he has taken Tsyplakov out of this lineup, and this is a decision that frustrates me a lot. Now, on the context of why he was removed from the lineup, Andrew Gross tweeted, Max Tsyplakov, who skated as an extra today after sitting most of the third period last game, says he needs to fix small details in his defensive play. He's spoken with Patrick Roy about that, disappointed not to play tomorrow, but confident he will be back in the lineup soon. And Tsyplakov is taking this very well, and for the record, Tsyplakov has not been a perfect defensive player. There are things he has to work on, and I think this is a situation that perhaps he was not doing something that the coaching staff directly asked him to do, and it is fair to punish a player for doing that. But if we're going to punish Tsyplakov for poor defensive play when he played 9 minutes on the third line, was already benched for the entire third period, then I think we also have to hold the defensemen accountable on this team. Players who are making incredibly obvious defensive issues. Romanov throwing passes right up the middle, getting intercepted for breakaways. I know that's something you talked about in practice as well, so I don't like that Tsyplakov gets different treatment. And it really seems to be with Patrick Roy, there always tends to be a couple players that he really likes to beat down on. Last year, Engvall was one of them, as we all know. Tsyplakov was another that really got a lot of criticism when he would not be playing a worse game than a player like Anthony Duclair, but he would regularly get last minutes or get scratched. Just the fact that Tsyplakov is starting on the fourth line this season and now getting scratched from the fourth line, it is very concerning. And I just don't know if this is the best way to handle this. And perhaps Tsyplakov should be given an opportunity to fix this mistake in a game rather sitting in a press box, which I don't think is very beneficial, especially when the role he's playing also does not make sense for his play style and likely is contributing to some of these issues. Tsyplakov is a player who I believe should be playing in the top 9 of the lineup. He is not a fourth line player. He's shown signs that last season, putting up 35 points, and yet this is where he is to start the year, now in the press box, Now looking at this fourth line, another thing I have to bring up is you have Kyle McLean and playing with Casey Cizikas at the center and Holmstrom. Holmstrom is not a fourth line player either. I don't understand why Holmstrom, after putting up a 45-point season and really showing some positive signs, playing in Patrick Roy's lineup, is now getting punished so early in the season. This, in terms of a fourth line for the Islanders, makes no sense. And I will note, while I don't think it is a incredibly big thing, it's worth noting that I think it's odd that McLean is getting in this game instead of Gatcomb. I guess that could be a thing where you want to get everybody a game early on in the season. But I think this is a situation where Gatcomb played a decent game and maybe should be rewarded. I don't really think that makes much sense. And again, this on its own, I'm not going to focus too much on the fourth line, because the fourth line isn't all that important in the grand scheme of things, just in terms of lineup decisions. However, it just shows a pattern of Patrick Roy just doing odd things. And I have no issue with McLean getting a game. You see what he looks like this season, but I don't think it sends the best message, especially when you go up the lineup. None of these lines are really the best line they can be. And other than the second line with Barzal, Palmieri, and Duclair, I'm not happy with any of these lines. And even that line, you can make the argument that other players should be on it who have deserved it more. But Duclair has had a good start to the year, and Palmieri is one of the most reliable players for Patrick Roy. That line makes sense. I'm not going to criticize it. But Lee, Pajot, Shabanov, that does not make much sense at all, especially when, from all the games we've seen this season, the best line I think the Islanders have had 5-on-5 was Holmstrom, Pajot, and Shabanov. I don't know why we're punishing Holmstrom after having really a great first game to the season, really giving some life to the Islanders on 5-on-5 where they have desperately needed it. The 5-on-5 play has not been good from the Islanders this season. That is very concerning when the whole identity of this team is supposed to be rolling four lines, but then you had a line there that worked and you instantly take it apart. And I'm not saying Holmstrom played a perfect game or anything like that, but he certainly has not deserved being demoted to the fourth line. I would argue early on this season, Holmstrom has been a significantly more noticeable player than Anders Lee. And besides, if you just look at the way that line is constructed, Shabanov is a highly skilled player. He likes to make elite passing plays, quick shots. That doesn't fit at all with what Lee's game is. It fits well with what Holmstrom's game is. And I just feel that that line is now just lacking a clear identity. And then with the first line, while I love Heineman and I do want to see him get more opportunities throughout the year, I don't think it's fair that he's really had a consistent run on the first line with Drouin and Horvat. While he's had a goal and he has played well at points, I don't think he's been a dominant player 5-on-5. And more importantly, I just don't think he's a good fit for Horvat as a player. Horvat is a shoot-first player. You don't want him playing with another shoot-first player. You really want a line that's really setting up Horvat. I just don't think while Heineman is great at getting the puck, and I do want to see him eventually grow into that role, at this point, I think he's better suited on a third or fourth line while he continues to develop his game. Perhaps the peak of Heineman is a second line forward. I'm not saying that he cannot get there, but right now, it just seems really odd to put him there over players like Holmstrom, Tsyplakov, who have not just, I feel like, earned more of an opportunity in general, but earned more of an opportunity for the New York Islanders. Heineman is a new player, and yet he is instantly getting put there over Holmstrom, who showed some good chemistry with Horvat last season. And perhaps my biggest concern with all this is not that the lines look strange, because a lot of times you want to try stuff out as the coach. You want to see what works and what doesn't. My biggest concern is we're going to look at this in 3 days, and it is going to be completely different, because for all 3 of the games the Islanders have had this season, they've changed the lineup every single time. They've moved Lee down to the third line, moved Duclair up. And yes, Duclair played well, but you can't keep changing the lines day by day based on who played well in a single game. There has to be some sort of consistency, especially when it comes to the fact that the offense has not been terrible. It has not been as good as you need it to be, but the offense has not been the problem. The defense has been the problem, and yet the Islanders have not made a single change to how they are running their defense. And speaking of that, we also have to talk about perhaps what I think is the strangest move Patrick Roy has made so far, and that is D'Angelo is once again quarterbacking the power play 1 unit at Islanders practice. In all three of the games the Islanders have played this season, he has started on the PP1, he has not looked good, and then they have switched D'Angelo with Schaefer, and then all of a sudden, the power play has worked. When Schaefer is the QB1 of the power play, it has looked very good. So I don't understand why they keep on switching it in the middle of the game, and yet every time they go to practice, they go back to D'Angelo. Give Schaefer a chance with the role, especially considering give him a practice where he can practice as a QB as power play for power play 1, because I can almost guarantee you, by the end of the game for Edmonton against Edmonton, when the Islanders are down a goal, they are going to put Schaefer on the first power play unit where he has not practiced. It does not make sense, and I guess you can make the argument maybe they're sheltering him or something like this. The offense is not the place where Schaefer needs to be sheltered. I totally understand the argument, especially with McDavid. You want to shelter him on defense for this next game. You don't want to put him out with McDavid or Draisaitl. But for the power play, it doesn't make sense to shelter, so I just don't understand what Patrick Roy is doing. There's so many changes, and the crazy thing about these lines is I can almost guarantee you by the end of the game against Edmonton, they're going to be completely different. This is not how you let players build chemistry, and this is something, I think I'm ranting about it as much as I am. I know it's 3 games of the season, but we saw it all last year. Patrick Roy likes to mix up the lines a lot, and you can mix the lines up as many times as you want. At some point, you have to let players play together, build some chemistry, and just build some consistency in this lineup. Because the last thing this Islanders team needs, 3 losses into the season without a single win, is trying something completely new in this game that inevitably is not going to work, especially when you're playing against such a well-oiled machine on Edmonton. When you change lines, there's some chemistry that's not quite there. You might make some more defensive mistakes, and you can't get away with that when you're playing Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers. Frankly, you can't get away with it against most teams in the NHL. Winnipeg's 4th line beat you last game because you were making sloppy mistakes. And finally, we're going to talk about one final lineup decision that I actually think makes a lot of sense, because we've been hitting on Patrick Roy pretty hard here, but where I do agree is he has Rittich playing in this game against Edmonton, and I think this makes a lot of sense, not just because Sorokin has not been great to start the season. Personally, I'm not concerned about Sorokin so far, but considering that their next game is against Ottawa after the Edmonton game, and you're not going to start Sorokin for all 5 of your first 5 games, it really made sense to go to Rittich in this game, because, being completely honest, I don't really love the Islanders' chances to beat Edmonton regardless of who is in the net. But with a team like Ottawa, I think Sorokin over Rittich can make a big difference. So hopefully the Islanders can get a win in one of these next 2. Let me know what you think about these line combinations. Am I making too much out of nothing? I don't know. On one hand, I feel like I am overreacting this early into the season, but it's just a pattern that I am getting a little concerned with, though I'm nowhere near pressing the panic button like some people are doing. So I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video. It really helps us as we continue to put Islanders content out every single day. My name is Patrick Nilan. I'm your host. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders.